Most people imagine animation and game studios as bright, creative spaces filled with caffeine, deadlines, and glowing monitors. But behind the screens, some of the most influential companies in Japan's entertainment industry have quietly carried stories of footsteps, shadows, and unexplained visitors. These aren't fan myths or internet creepypasta. They come from interviews, staff recollections, and long standing internal lore. This is Shifting Veils.
And today we get to explore some fun and interesting, creepy stuff from studios for anime and game studios.
The story begins in the long, quiet hours of an editing night during the production of Grave of the Fireflies. The film itself was made at Studio Ghibli in the late 1980s, and it's remembered inside the company as one of the studio's most solemn projects. Animators and editors worked through nights to shape scenes that carried the weight of wartime loss, and the building around them grew still as the city slept. It was in that hush that the first footsteps were heard. They were not the hurried, uneven steps of someone rushing to a deadline. They were slow, deliberate, and paced as if someone were walking a corridor on patrol. The sound moved along the hallway outside the editing rooms, stopped for a moment, then continued. When an editor would open the door to see who was there, the corridor would be empty. The sound would resume only after the door closed again, as if the walker waited until no one was watching. What gives the story its shape is not a single dramatic encounter, but the repetition. Different people across different nights and different years described the same pattern. Footsteps that came and went, always at late hours, always along the same stretch of hallway. The accounts described small and precise intrusions into the ordinary rhythm of work. Over time, the staff began to treat the phenomenon as part of the building's personality. They gave the unseen presence a name in private conversation: the Night Watcher. Those who told the story didn't frame it as a ghost story for tourists. They spoke of it the way technicians speak of a temperamental machine, an oddity to be noted, respected, and not needlessly provoked. Some animators admitted to feeling a chill when the footsteps passed, a tightening of attention that made every creak and hum seem amplified. Others treated it as a quiet companion to long nights, a reminder that the building had a history and that the work done there was not without weight.
I'm gonna, I would probably do the same thing, as because I try and do the same thing whenever I feel like something's here at my home.
Mm-hmm.
Is just kind of be like, so you want something to eat too, or just kind of like I'm talking to myself, sort of thing. I know it sounds crazy, but
It's more or less a quiet observation. I don't often physically or verbally respond to things like that. If if it is something that has been very, I feel like, very aggressive, intrusive, repetitive, like almost annoying, I might say something like really or knock it off, you know.
well, with the experiences you've had in your home, I don't blame you for really giving it, any audio.
It gives me plenty of audio, which
Mm,
sometimes gets picked up during podcast recording.
apparently so. At least 2 episodes now.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's usually a quiet observation, hardly even like a side glance, like I
Mm-hmm.
saw you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'll make conversation, but it's more like I'm talking out loud to myself. It's what like those kinds of periods. I don't know if you do that to yourself, but I do it to myself.
Oh, I talk to myself all day long. I mostly make up songs, like stupid songs, as I walk
Well,
through my
well,
house.
see, you get visitors. You have people you chat with like through the day. I don't. I'm pretty by myself pretty much almost the entire time. So whenever I'm like at home, I actually have like, see, I'm just making myself sound crazy, but I'll have conversations with myself out loud. Yeah.
Yeah, I used to hear that, like, it's not a big deal unless you start answering your own questions, but I don't see what the big deal is about that. I do that all the
I was gonna
time.
say I've done that so much. If that's a problem, then I should be committed.
Right?
Anyways, sorry.
The atmosphere of the studio during that era, long hours, intense emotional labor, and the subject matter of the film itself made the footsteps feel more than a prank or a coincidence. The film being edited was a story of loss and absence, and the corridor's sound seemed to echo that theme in the most mundane way possible. For many who worked there, the night watcher became a private, eerie punctuation mark at the end of a long shift. It is important to be clear about what is verifiable. The accounts of footsteps come from staff recollections and interviews that have circulated among animators, journalists, and fans. They are part of Studio Ghibli's internal lore rather than an event the studio has formally investigated or publicly documented in official reports. The film and its production history are well documented, and the late night work culture around such projects is a matter of record. The specific phenomenon of footsteps is attested in personal testimonies and repeated anecdotes, but it lacks a formal, independently verified investigation that would satisfy strict evidentiary standards. If you listen to the story as a piece of workplace folklore, it tells you something true about creative labor. Buildings remember the people who pass through them, and the stories those people tell become part of the place. Whether the night watcher is a ghost, a trick of acoustics, or a shared psychological echo of long nights, the tale endures because it was experienced by real people who carried the memory forward. The footsteps remain, in that sense, as real as any other artifact of studio's history. I noticed when I was researching that many of these Japanese studios have witness accounts, which to me is verifiable enough when you have a collective of personal accounts and sometimes group accounts. But they aren't verifiable in the way that there's evidence collected. And I think the primary reason is that in Japan, the spiritual world is respected and sometimes feared, rather than treated as a curiosity to be proven like you would see haunted locations in the Western world. Ghibli's haunting was simple: footsteps in a quiet hallway, steady and patient, as if someone unseen was making late night rounds. It felt like a presence that stayed just out of sight. But when you leave Ghibli's warm wooden halls and step into Konami's sleek Tokyo offices, the company behind Silent Hill and Yu-Gi-Oh!, that atmosphere shifts sharply. Konami's stairwell apparition walked straight into the camera frame, descended a flight of stairs, and vanished without triggering a single sensor.
The story begins in a narrow stairwell of a Tokyo office building where Konami once housed part of its staff. It was the kind of place that hummed with fluorescent light and the low, constant thrum of servers and vending machines, a building that lived by schedules and badge swipes. Most days, the stairwell was simply a route between floors, a practical space for employees to move between meetings and late shifts. At night, when the lights thinned and only a handful of people remained, their stairwell took on a different character. It was quieter, colder, and more attentive to small sounds. You'd hear that pin drop in there. One night, a security guard reviewing overnight footage noticed something odd. On camera, a woman in business attire descended the stairs, her posture ordinary, her pace unremarkable. She walked down a flight and reached the landing, then vanished. So, poof. The footage showed no door opening, no shadow slipping through a gap, and the motion sensors that should have registered a person moving through the stairwell did not trigger. The building's access logs recorded no badge swipe at that time. Security replayed the clip, frame by frame, and the image remained the same: a full bodied figure appearing and disappearing without the mechanical signatures a living person would leave. Word of the clip spread quietly among staff. Developers working late on a deadline began to tell one another about the woman on the stairs, not as a joke, but as a shared, unsettling fact. A few employees swore they had seen her in person: a flash of a skirt at the landing, the impression of someone passing by a glass door, a silhouette that dissolved when anyone tried to follow. Others had only the story and the memory of the security guard's pale face when he described the footage. The tale settled into the company's internal lore the way a persistent bug settles into a codebase. Noticed, discussed, but never quite fixed. We still we still see that shit. Those who worked the night shifts described the feeling the apparition left behind. It was not a scream or a crash, but a small, precise disturbance, a sudden drop in temperature, the sense of being observed for a moment, the way fluorescent lights seemed to flicker a fraction when the story was told aloud. People who had once been skeptical found themselves avoiding that stairwell after midnight, choosing elevators or longer routes instead. I would not step into an elevator with a haunting happening.
Yeah, I don't know. I think I would rather be in a stairwell. Neither one really seems optimal, but I
Well,
have some control in the stairwell.
yeah, I was gonna say with the power, with the lights flickering and stuff like that, my
Right.
mind goes to an elevator shutting down in the middle of a trip
Yes.
down.
Yeah.
But also, I've seen plenty of horror movies where things are crawling up the stairs backwards up towards you.
Right. Yeah, same.
Others treated the phenomenon with a resigned curiosity, as if the building had acquired an extra inexplicable employee who kept to the stairwell and never clocked out. That sounds like regular work. You clock in, you never clock out. Over time, the story accumulated details and variations. Some accounts emphasized the woman's ordinary appearance.
Until you meet her alone on the stairwell.
I was thinking
I've
of the
seen that
woman that
movie
did.
too.
Yeah, that's true. I was thinking of the woman that described the man when he appeared to her on the other episode. Well, what did she say he was? She described him as ugly
Oh,
or something.
odious.
Odious. That's what it was. She wasn't odious though. Apparently.
I'm gonna start calling people that. Don't be
just
so
a
odious.
just walked in the door. Man, I can tell you, they looked real odious, real vulgar. Business suit, briefcase, nothing theatrical. While others remembered a face that could not be made out, a presence that felt more like a memory than a person. The lack of a clear explanation only deepened the unease. Was it a glitch in the cameras? A quirk of wiring and sensors? Was it a prank? A staged clip circulated by someone with access to the security system? Or was it something else? A residual trace of the building's past that chose to manifest in the most mundane of places? It is important to separate the atmosphere from the evidence. The story of the stairwell apparition is grounded in accounts from former employees and in a security camera clip that several staff members have described in interviews and online recollections. Hopefully, not Reddit, because Reddit's very unreliable these days. Those who tell the tale do so consistently enough that the incident has become part of the company's informal history. At the same time, there has been no official public release of the footage, no formal investigation made public by Konami, and no independent verification that definitely rules out technical causes or human tampering. The stairwell apparition remains, therefore, both a true piece of workplace lore and an unresolved anomaly. The people who worked there remember the clip, the cold draft, and the way the stairwell felt different after dark. Whether the woman on the stairs was a camera artifact, a prank, or something that defies easy explanation, the story endures because real people experienced it and carried the memory forward. In the quiet hours, when the building settles and the lights hum low, the stairwell keeps its secret, and those who pass it after midnight do so with a little more care than they once did.
The woman in Konami's stairwell disappears mid descent, leaving only an empty landing and a camera frame that shouldn't be empty. Security rewinds the footage. She's there, then she isn't. No sensor, no door, no trace. And then, without ceremony, you step into Nintendo's Kyoto headquarters. The air feels different here, quieter, older, and before anyone speaks, you notice it. a tall shadow drifting behind a glass partition, moving with the slow certainty of someone who knows the building better than the people working in it. There is no public, independently verified record of a haunting at Nintendo's Kyoto headquarters. What exists instead are repeated, consistent recollections from people who worked late nights in the older Kyoto buildings. Those recollections form a piece of workplace lore that has circulated among developers and engineers for decades. The account that follows is a careful, atmospheric retelling of those testimonies, true as testimony, not as an officially investigated phenomenon. The story begins in the era when Nintendo's Kyoto offices were smaller, corridors narrower, and the nights were definitely longer. Development cycles pushed teams into the quiet hours. Programmers hunched over terminals, designers traced sprites by the glow of desk lamps, and QA testers ran the same level until the code stopped surprising them. In that hush, the building changed its voice. The hum of servers and the distant rumble of trains became a backdrop for smaller sounds: paper shifting, a chair scraping, the soft, almost polite tread of footsteps that didn't belong to anyone on the roster. The first people to speak of the figure did so without flourish. They were not telling a ghost story. They were describing an oddity that had become part of their night shift routine. A programmer walking back from the kitchenette would glimpse a dark shape move past the glass of a meeting room, a silhouette that did not reflect the fluorescent light the way a human body would. A tester alone in a lab would feel the air change, as if someone had passed close behind. And when they turned, there would be nothing but the slow blink of an idle monitor. Multiple employees who did not know one another's names at the time later described the same impression: a tall, silent presence that drifted through the building like a memory. The figure earned a nickname in private conversations: the Shadow Worker. It was not a name meant to mock. It was a shorthand for something that behaved like a colleague but left no trace. People compared it to an extra employee who never logged in, who never took a break, who moved with the economy of someone who had learned the building's routes by heart. It never spoke. It never interfered with work. It simply appeared at the edges of vision and then was gone, as if the office itself had folded a human silhouette into its architecture. Those who encountered the shadow worker described the same small, uncanny details. The silhouette seemed to pass behind glass without producing a reflection. The temperature in a room would drop by a degree or two, a subtle chill that made hands go numb on a keyboard. When someone tried to follow, corridors stretched and doors led to storage closets where no one had been. The building in those moments felt like a place that remembered its past occupants and was willing to show them, briefly, to the living. The content of the work being done there, games that toyed with shadows, with hidden rooms, and unseen players, gave the encounters an extra layer of resonance. Developers joked that their creations had come home to visit, that the code had learned to walk, but the jokes were thin coverings over real unease. People who had once been skeptical found themselves avoiding certain hallways after midnight. New hires were told, half in jest and half in warning, to expect oddities if they stayed late enough. The story passed from one team to another, not as a marketing anecdote, but as a shared memory that shaped how people moved through the building at night. There is no publicly released video, no formal investigation by Nintendo, and no official statement confirming a paranormal presence. The accounts come from former employees, recollections, interviews, and informal conversations, testimony rather than forensic proof. That said, the consistency of the descriptions across different people and different years gives the tale a particular weight. When multiple unrelated witnesses describe the same small details, the way the figure moved, the flicker of lights, the drop in temperature, the story becomes more than a single person's imagination. It becomes a thread woven through the studio's nightwork culture. The eeriness of the shadow worker is not in dramatic hauntings or violent manifestations. It is in the quiet persistence of a presence that behaves like a colleague who never leaves. It is in the way a building can hold the echo of human rhythms so precisely that those rhythms sometimes seem to replay themselves. For those who worked late in Kyoto, the shadow worker was a reminder that the places where we make things keep the shape of the people who made them. Whether that shape is a ghost, a trick of light, or a shared psychological echo, it is real to the people who felt it. Years later, when the company moved into newer facilities and the old corridors were repurposed or renovated, the story did not vanish. It traveled with the people who had worked those nights, told in quiet moments between meetings and in the margins of interviews. The shadow worker remains part of the Nintendo Studio's internal folklore, an eerie, true to witness account that sits at the border between workplace memory and the uncanny.
Square-Enix, the game developer that gave us Final Fantasy and Dragon Quest, has their own story. A modern office block in Tokyo, glass and concrete stacked into neat floors. By day, it held the noise of meetings, the clack of keyboards, the low, friendly chaos of teams moving between desks. By night, it became something else, a place of small, precise silences where the ordinary sounds of work, printer whirs, vending machines, and the distant rumble of trains were amplified into a kind of attention. The elevator first earned its reputation in the way most quiet, uncanny things do, slowly, through repetition. It began with a single odd incident. An employee leaving late after a long debugging session pressed the button, stepped inside, and rode down. When the doors opened on a floor that should have been empty, there was a cold draft and the faint impression that someone had just stepped out. The hallway was empty, however. The lights were on, but no one stood in the doorway. The employee shrugged it off as fatigue and went home. A week later, another person told the same story. This time, the elevator stopped on a floor where no one had been registered. The doors opened to a corridor that smelled faintly of old paper and coffee, and the air felt thinner, as if someone had just passed through. Maintenance checked the logs and found nothing unusual. No button presses, no sensor triggers, no recorded access. The elevator's control panel showed no error codes. The building's badge system recorded no entry at the time. When a pattern emerges in a place where people keep careful records, it draws attention. Security reviewed footage. The cameras showed the elevator arriving and the doors opening, but the footage captured nothing that explained the motion. No figure stepped out, no shadow slipped past the frame. The doors closed again as if someone had walked away. The motion sensors that should have registered a person moving through the threshold remained silent. The logs showed no badge swipes. The elevator behaved like a machine obeying an invisible command. Word spread through the company the way workplace stories do, quietly and in the margins of conversations. In the tired laughter of people who had stayed too late, developers and designers who worked through the night began to avoid that elevator after a certain hour. Some took the stairs instead. Others timed their trips to coincide with a colleague's presence. A few brave souls rode it alone and reported the same small disturbances. A sudden chill that made their breath fog for a second. A soft, almost inaudible whisper of air as the doors opened. The sense of being watched for a heartbeat before the corridor revealed nothing. They're waiting for you to step off with them. They're looking back and watching you. It's like, come on, come get this paper and coffee.
So it seems like their stories just tell that the experience would happen when they were alone. It didn't happen when they had company, I
It certainly
guess.
seems that way, yeah.
Yeah.
People describe the sensation as a presence that preferred the ordinary. A woman in a business suit, a briefcase left on a bench, the faint echo of footsteps that never resolved into a source. Others remembered only the mechanical oddity, doors opening for no reason, sensors that did not register, and the logs that refused to explain what had happened. Employees who had worked in the building before the company moved in added another layer to the story. The structure had housed other tenants over the years, they said, and longtime maintenance staff spoke of quirks that predated the current occupants. The elevator's behavior, they suggested, might be part of the building's memory, an old pattern of wiring, a sensor that occasionally misread the electromagnetic field, a ghost of a past tenant's routine. Those explanations comforted some people and unsettled others. Technical possibilities did not erase the feeling that something else was at work. The company never issued a public statement. There was no press release, no official investigation posted on the internet. That silence did not mean the matter was ignored. Internally, facilities ran diagnostics, replaced sensors, and inspected the elevator's control systems. They found nothing that consistently reproduced the anomaly. The hardware behaved within specifications. The software logs showed no phantom inputs, and yet the incidents had continued, irregular and infrequent enough to resist easy replication, but regular enough to be noticed. What made this story linger was not a single dramatic event, but the accumulation of small corroborated experiences. Different people from different teams and different nights described the same oddities: the doors opening for no one, the corridor that smelled faintly of something familiar, and then nothing. The temperature that dipped just for a breath. Those who had once been skeptical found themselves altering their routes throughout the building. New hires were told, in the same tone one might use to warn about a temperamental coffee machine, to avoid the elevator after midnight if they were alone. The elevator's reputation shaped behavior. Meetings were scheduled to end before the late shift began. Teams paired up for late night runs to the printer. The building's nocturnal life adjusted to accommodate an unexplained variable. In that way, the phenomenon became part of the workplace's culture, not a spectacle, not a story to be monetized, but a quiet shared fact that threaded through the company's nights. There are several ways to read the events. A technical explanation remains plausible: intermittent sensor faults, electromagnetic interference, or a software quirk that allowed the elevator to respond to phantom signals. But there'd still be phantom signals. Human factors play a role too. It was fatigue, expectation, and the suggestibility of a group can amplify ordinary anomalies into something uncanny. Yet none of these explanations fully accounts for this consistency of the reports or the way the incidents clustered in time and place. The other reading is less tidy. Buildings are repositories of human activity, and the place where people spend long hours can accumulate the shape of those hours. An elevator is a threshold, a liminal space between floors and functions, and thresholds have always been the settings for stories about things that do not fit neatly into categories. That, do you think that's why they like cats so much? Like animes and stuff like that? You think that's because the mention of thresholds made me think of us talking about cats and
Mhm.
thresholds before, and just curious if maybe that's
I'm not sure. You know, in Japan, there's like an there's a national holiday for
or the
cats.
cat day. Yeah,
Yeah. It's quite a celebration. I believe they have parades and stuff. So,
cats cats are just a common like
I don't
thing. So
know. And you know, they're not the only culture that celebrated cats.
oh, not at all. I mean, Egyptians too. I mean,
Right.
yeah,
So, I don't know. I think there's something to be said about it. Um, they do kind of peer into liminal spaces as though they're interacting with things at times. So, I'm not sure. Maybe.
yeah,
Maybe
maybe
so.
maybe just a thought for everybody out there.
Hmm.
The elevator that opens for no one is a small modern parable about absence, a machine that performs an act of hospitality for a guest who never arrives. Whatever the cause, the story endures because real people experienced it and carried the memory forward. The elevator remains in service, its panels polished, its cables inspected, and its software updated. The lights still blink in the lobby, but when the building settles and the last fluorescent tubes hum low, some employees still choose the stairs. They move through the corridors with a little more care, aware that the ordinary architecture of their workday can, at times, reveal a seam where the world behaves differently. The tale of the elevator is not a headline or a verified paranormal dossier. It is a workplace memory, a cluster of consistent testimonies, a handful of unexplained security logs, and the small behavioral changes of people who shared the same nights. It is eerie because it is mundane, because the thing that unsettles is not a scream, but a door opening for no one, a corridor that smells like coffee and old paper. It smells like a library, right?
Uh-huh.
A breath of cold air where there should be none. It is true, and the only way that matters for stories like this. It happened to people who remember it, and those memories have shaped how they move through the building ever since.
This next story begins with the creators of the Devil May Cry series in the small hours of a Tokyo night. Capcom's QA teams were used to long shifts, to the repetitive rhythm of playthroughs and bug reports, to the peculiar fatigue that makes a hallway seem longer than it is. It was in that exhausted, hyper-attentive state that the first reports began to circulate. A shadow moving across the back wall of a windowless testing room, seen by people who were alone and who later described the same impossible details. Those who tell the story do so without flourish. They are testers and developers who worked late nights and who, when asked for years, still remember the moment their skin tightened. One tester described sitting in a chair, headphones on, watching a build loop when a dark shape slid across the far wall as if someone had walked between the lamp and the plaster. The room had a single entrance. No one had come in. Another recalled the same silhouette passing behind the glass of the observation window, tall and thin, moving with fluidity that did not match any human gait. When they stood and crossed the room to check, the space was empty, and the air smelled faintly of dust and warm plastic. What gives the tale its weight is not a single dramatic encounter, but the repetition and the consistency. Multiple employees from different teams and different years described a figure that was too tall to be a person and moving in a way that didn't match anyone in the room. The sightings were never accompanied by a sound or a voice. They were small, precise intrusions into the ordinary workday, a shadow that did not cast a reflection, a chill that made fingers numb on a controller, a light that flickered as if acknowledging a presence and then steadied again.
Capcom never issued a public statement about the phenomenon. There is no released footage, no formal investigation posted to the company internet, and no official report that confirms a paranormal cause. What exists are the memories of people who spent nights in those rooms and the quiet way the story passed from one cohort of testers to the next. Technically, plausible explanations exist and are often offered by those who experienced the events. Long hours and sleep deprivation can make the mind prone to misperception. Reflections, projector light, and the peculiar geometry of a room can create illusions that look like movement. Electrical quirks can make lights flicker and sensors misbehave, yet even the most skeptical testers admitted that these explanations did not fully account for the consistency of the reports. Different people on different nights describing the same silhouette, the same chill, and the same odd absence of sound. The eeriness of the story is not in spectacle but in its mundanity. The figure did not stalk or harm, it simply moved through the edges of attention. For those who worked there, the shadow became a part of the workplace's texture, a quiet, uncanny presence that made late nights feel watched and made ordinary corridors feel like thresholds. What can be stated with confidence is this: real people who worked at Capcom have recounted late night encounters with an unexplained shadow in testing rooms. Those testimonies are consistent enough to form a piece of internal lore. What cannot be claimed as verified is a paranormal explanation. No public, independent evidence confirms that the phenomenon was anything other than an unexplained workplace anomaly. The story endures because it was experienced, remembered, and passed on, and because the places where we make our stories sometimes keep a few of their own.
All of these, uh, all of these stories, it just sounds like they're like apparitions, like phantom sightings, shadows, like shadow people, but there's like really no interaction.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like passing through.
No, we've talked about the different forms of spirits too, and we know that there are looping
Hmm.
situations,
Some of
and
them
it make
seem that way
mm-hmm.
in these
And
stories.
I imagine putting long hours in like that, not everybody's gonna have the mental fortitude
Hmm.
to be able
Yeah,
to survive that kind of life, you know?
right. Yeah, I don't know. I loved working night shifts, but long hours add something to it. Some of it could have been just fatigue for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Oh yeah.
but
I mean,
and I think the reason why there's no investigations, like I said earlier in the episode, they just don't really see things the same way as we do over here.
mm-hmm.
There's a haunted location. If they allow investigators, any investigator will flock to it, and it's just kind of you know camera lights action.
Right, yeah.
They don't do that there so much.
No, it's very much so very opposite.
Hmm.
I mean, have you seen The Grudge?
You know, I've only seen bits and pieces of it. I kind of refuse to watch it. Can't say why. I just didn't. What am I missing?
Vengeful spirits killing
Uh,
anybody that walks in the house.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that would encourage nobody to interact with.
Correct. That's what I'm saying. Nobody's going to investigate something like that. Every time you go into a house, you just cuz it didn't just, stay in the house. It followed you around wherever you went. It was a
Yeah.
curse. So,
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I think I picked that up enough about the film. I don't know. It just wasn't my cup of tea. I think it's why I never really pursued watching it.
well, it's fun because around that same time, maybe a year or two before the American version of the movie came out, I was getting into Japanese horror films and Chinese horror films and all that stuff. So when it came to it, I had already watched Ju-on, the original, as opposed to the American version,
Yeah.
and enjoyed the Japanese version much more. It's different.
Yeah, that's the case in a lot of productions, honestly. The
Hmm.
Japanese production is generally better.
That's true.
These studios aren't fringe operations. They're the creators of some of the most beloved games and anime in the world. Companies built on precision, deadlines, and technical expertise. Their buildings are modern, climate controlled, and packed with hardware that leaves little room for superstition. Most of the people working inside them are engineers, animators, programmers, and editors who spend their nights troubleshooting code or polishing frames, not swapping ghost stories. And yet the stories persist. They move quietly through departments passed along during late night shifts or mentioned in a low voice during onboarding, the way someone might warn you about a temperamental printer or a drafty stairwell. No one is trying to build a legend. No one is chasing attention. These accounts survive because the people who experienced them weren't trying to impress anyone. They were simply reporting what happened. A door that opens on its own, a shadow that crosses a hallway with no footsteps, an elevator that arrives uncalled. Small moments, but consistent enough that they become part of the building's personality. Not because anyone wants them to be true, but because the people who saw them had no reason to doubt their own eyes.